You can walk into a store, grab a $5 bottle without thinking, and call it a night. Or you can spend thousands on a single bottle that's been aging longer than some careers. Both are wine, but they sit on completely different levels. From beginner-friendly pours to expert-level tasting, this is the full ladder. And here's the twist. Most people never climb past level 2. Level 1, beginner. At the very bottom of the ladder, wine exists in its simplest form. There is no strategy, no comparison, no deeper thought behind the choice. It is just another option sitting next to everything else. And most of the time, the decision comes down to what feels easiest in the moment. For a beginner, the experience is straightforward. The bottle is opened, the wine is poured, and that is where it begins and ends. There is no expectation for complexity. No need to analyze what is in the glass. The goal is comfort. Something that goes down smoothly, something that does not challenge the palate, something that feels familiar right away. Sweetness often plays a big role here. It makes the experience more approachable and removes any sharp edges that might feel unpleasant. Instead of focusing on layers or structure, the attention stays on how easy it is to drink. If it tastes good in a simple way, that is enough. The decision-making process is just as uncomplicated. Price is usually the first filter, followed by whatever stands out visually. A recognizable label, a clean-looking bottle, or even a recommendation from someone else can be enough to seal the choice. There is no need to explore beyond that. Socially, this level blends into casual settings without drawing attention. Wine might show up at a small gathering, a relaxed evening, or a quick stop at the store before heading home. It is not the center of the experience. It is just part of it. What defines this stage most clearly is the absence of pressure. There is no expectation to know anything or to develop a preference. Everything is open. Everything is simple. And everything is immediate. That simplicity is what makes it accessible to almost anyone. But even here, something begins to take shape over time. A certain bottle might stand out, a particular style might feel more enjoyable than others. These small moments start to build a foundation, even if it is not obvious at first. At level 1, wine is just a drink, nothing more, nothing less. But it is also the starting point for everything that comes next. Level 2, casual drinker. This is where wine quietly becomes part of someone's routine without demanding too much attention. It is no longer a random pick grabbed in a rush, but it is also not something that requires deep thought. A casual drinker knows what they like, even if they cannot fully explain why. That alone brings a sense of ease that did not exist at the very beginning. There is usually a small rotation of go-to options at this level. Maybe a smooth red for evenings, a crisp white for warmer days, or something light and bubbly for social moments. These choices are not driven by technical understanding, but by experience. They have tried enough to know what feels right, and that familiarity becomes their guide. What makes this stage interesting is how confidence starts to show up in simple ways. Ordering at a restaurant becomes easier. Walking into a store feels less overwhelming. They are no longer staring at shelves, wondering where to begin. Instead, they move with a bit more direction, even if that direction is still limited. Taste also begins to shift, but subtly. Sweetness might still be appealing, but it is no longer the only thing that matters. Balance starts to come into play. Some wines feel smoother, others feel sharper, and those differences begin to register. They may not use technical language, but they can tell when something feels off or when it hits just right. Socially, this level blends in easily. Casual drinkers are comfortable bringing a bottle to gatherings or sharing a glass with friends without overthinking it. Wine becomes part of the setting rather than the focus of attention. It supports the moment instead of defining it. There is also a sense of practicality here. Price still matters, but not in a restrictive way. They are willing to spend a little more for something they enjoy, but there is no need to chase expensive bottles. The goal is simple: something reliable, something enjoyable, something that fits the occasion. At this level, wine settles into everyday life. It is familiar, comfortable, and easy to enjoy without effort. But beneath that simplicity, something else begins to build. Curiosity starts to peek through. And once that curiosity grows strong enough, it leads to a shift that feels surprisingly natural. If you enjoy breakdowns like this that actually make wine make sense without overcomplicating it, hit like and subscribe. It helps a lot, and it lets me know to keep building these ladders all the way from casual to expert. Level 3. Enthusiast. This is the point where wine stops being passive and starts becoming deliberate. An enthusiast is no longer picking bottles at random or sticking to whatever feels safe. There is a growing sense that different wines offer different experiences, and that realization changes everything. It opens the door to exploration. At this stage, people begin noticing patterns. They might realize they prefer certain styles over others, or that wines from specific places tend to appeal to them more. It is not about memorizing facts yet, but about recognizing differences. One glass might feel lighter and more delicate, another richer and more structured, and those contrasts become interesting rather than confusing. The experience of drinking also becomes more layered. The first sip introduces the wine, but the second and third deepen the understanding. Flavors seem to unfold gradually, and what felt simple at first starts to reveal more character. This makes the act of drinking more engaging, almost like paying closer attention to a song you have heard before and suddenly noticing new details. There is also a shift in how decisions are made. Instead of choosing the same bottle every time, enthusiasts begin experimenting. They might try something from a new region or pick a wine they have never had before, just to see how it compares. That willingness to explore is what defines this level more than anything else. Socially, this stage comes with a subtle boost in confidence. They can walk into a store or sit at a restaurant and make a choice without hesitation. It might not always be perfect, but it is intentional. That alone changes how wine feels, turning it from something uncertain into something approachable. What keeps this level exciting is the sense of discovery. Every new bottle has the potential to surprise them, to confirm a preference or challenge it. There is no fixed routine yet, just a growing interest that keeps pulling them forward. At level 3, wine becomes a journey. Not a serious one, not a technical one, but a curious one. And that curiosity is what pushes people toward the next stage, where interest slowly turns into commitment. Level 4. Hobbyist. This is where wine quietly enters someone's daily life and starts taking up more space than expected. What began as occasional enjoyment turns into something they actively think about. Not in an overwhelming way, but enough that it changes how they shop, how they host, and even how they relax at home. It becomes a small ritual rather than a random decision. The first noticeable shift is physical. Tools begin to appear. A proper opener replaces the basic one. Then maybe a decanter shows up, followed by better glasses that feel different in the hand. None of these things are strictly necessary, but they make the experience feel more intentional. Pouring wine starts to feel like part of the process instead of just a step before drinking. What really defines this level, though, is curiosity turning into habit. A hobbyist does not just drink wine, they pay attention to it. They notice how one bottle feels fuller than another, or how some wines seem brighter and more refreshing. Even without formal knowledge, they begin connecting those experiences. The second glass of the same bottle often becomes more interesting than the first, because they start picking up details they missed initially. Buying behavior also shifts in a subtle but important way. Instead of grabbing one bottle for the moment, they start thinking ahead. Maybe they keep a few options at home for different situations. Something lighter for a relaxed evening, something deeper for a meal, something sparkling for when friends come over. It is not a collection yet, but it is no longer random either. Socially, this level comes with a quiet reputation. Friends begin asking for suggestions, not because the hobbyist is an expert, but because they seem to care more than the average person. That alone builds a certain level of trust. They might not always have the perfect answer, but they have enough experience to guide others in the right direction. What makes this stage interesting is how natural it feels. There is no pressure to become an expert, no need to prove anything. It is simply enjoyment evolving into interest. And that interest keeps expanding, almost without effort. At level 4, wine becomes part of how someone lives. Not just something they consume, but something they engage with. And once that shift happens, the experience starts to deepen in ways that are hard to reverse. Level 5. Connoisseur. This is where things start to feel intentional in a way that is hard to fake. A connoisseur is not just picking wine because it sounds familiar, or because someone else recommended it. There is a quiet confidence in how they choose, and it shows long before the bottle is even opened. They scan labels differently, not for branding, but for clues. Region, grape, producer, even the year, all of it begins to matter. What really defines this level is understanding without needing to overthink it. They can sit down with a glass and quickly make sense of what is happening. Not in a rehearsed, textbook way, but in a natural, almost instinctive rhythm. One sip gives a general picture, then the next sharpens it. The texture, the weight, the way it lingers. These details come together like pieces of something familiar, rather than something confusing. There is also a noticeable shift in how they talk about wine. It stops being vague and starts becoming specific, but still grounded. Instead of saying something is just nice, they might point out that it feels structured, or that the finish carries a certain grip. Even when they cannot fully name every element, they know how to describe the experience in a way that makes sense to others. That clarity is what separates them from the levels below. Buying habits change as well. A connoisseur does not chase the loudest bottle on the shelf. They are not easily pulled in by flashy labels or exaggerated descriptions. Instead, they rely on what they have learned over time. Maybe they have had a great bottle from a certain region before, or they trust a particular producer. Those patterns guide their decisions, making each purchase feel more deliberate. There is also a sense of independence that develops here. They are no longer relying on trends or what everyone else is drinking. They have built their own preferences and, more importantly, they trust them. That trust makes wine feel less intimidating and more enjoyable, because it removes the constant need for validation. At this level, wine becomes personal. Not in a sentimental way, but in a grounded, confident way. It reflects taste, judgment, and experience all at once. And once someone reaches this point, going back to random, thoughtless choices starts to feel almost impossible. Level 6. Collector. Right below that sits a level that looks impressive from the outside, but plays a completely different game. Collectors are not chasing knowledge in the same way experts do. They are chasing time. Because here, wine is not just opened, it is waited on. A collector sees a bottle and thinks beyond tonight. They think about how it will taste in 5 years, 10 years, sometimes even longer. That decision alone changes everything. Storage becomes important, temperature matters, and suddenly a simple bottle turns into something that needs protection. A cheap shelf will not cut it anymore. Conditions have to stay stable, or everything inside that bottle slowly falls apart. What makes this level fascinating is restraint. Buying a great bottle is easy. Not opening it is the real test. While most people want immediate payoff, collectors are comfortable delaying the experience. That patience builds anticipation, and when the bottle is finally opened, it carries more than just flavor. It carries time. There is also a shift in how value is seen. At lower levels, price is tied directly to what is in the glass. Here, price also reflects rarity, reputation, and how difficult it is to find that exact bottle again. Two wines can taste similar, but one carries history, and that alone changes how it is treated. Still, collectors are not automatically experts. They might own incredible bottles without being able to fully break them down in technical terms. And that contrast matters, because at this level, wine becomes part enjoyment, part identity, and part long-term thinking. It is no longer just about what you drink. It is about what you choose to keep. Level 7. Expert/sommelier. At the very top, wine stops being about preference and starts becoming interpretation. This is where someone can take a glass, swirl it once, and begin breaking it apart piece by piece without needing the label as a crutch. The color already tells a story. The aroma sharpens it, and by the time it hits the palate, they are not guessing anymore. They are confirming. What separates this level is structure. An expert is not just saying a wine is good or smooth, they are identifying acidity levels, tannin grip, alcohol weight, and how all of it balances together. Even something as simple as taking a second sip is not random. The first pass introduces the wine, while the second locks in details that were missed, almost like rereading a sentence to catch what slipped by the first time. Then comes the part most people find intimidating: blind tasting. No label, no hints, no safety net. Just the glass and everything it reveals. Instead of panic, this level thrives in that uncertainty. They break it down logically, narrowing possibilities until a likely region, grape, and even age starts to form. It is not magic. It is repetition meeting discipline. But what makes this level truly different is communication. Knowing wine is one thing. Explaining it without sounding unbearable is another. A real expert can guide a beginner through a bottle without overwhelming them, making something complex feel simple and approachable. That balance is rare. At level 7, wine becomes a language. Not something you sip passively, but something you read, translate, and explain. And once you reach this point, every glass stops being just a drink and starts becoming information. Most people stay at level 1 or 2 and never think twice about it, but every step up changes how wine feels, how it's chosen, and what it means to you. So where do you fall right now? And which level of champagne do you usually drink from? Subscribe for more breakdowns on how wine and champagne actually climb in quality.